savvy in ophthalmology. So we'll be discussing a lot of techie stuff, lot of mobile apps, which by the end of this webinar, you'll be surprised how these free apps can really prove to be a viable replacements for the expensive equipments we are using today in our practice. At the outset, I would like to first thank Delhi Ophthalmological Society, DOS, for giving us this platform. Before we begin, I would like our President, Mahajan Sir, to kindly speak a few words.
Thank you, Rahil. It's a good afternoon to everyone. So it's a welcome to the new webinar today with it's a really appropriately named Tech Savvy. I think the younger generation is getting tech savvy for everything, and this webinar is it's a really a good idea to start with. We have got a galaxy of. I just welcome Dr. Abbas, Dr. Aditi, Dr. Bhupesh, and Dr. Bhalla, Dr. Namrata are on this platform. And we have today galaxy of young ophthalmologists to speak on this topic of tech savvy. So I hand over Dr. Namrata, please, to start the meeting and introduce every speaker, please.
So it is a pleasure for me to, for us, in fact, at Delhi Ophthalmological Society to be associated with the Young Ophthalmology Society. And this proposal came from them, and we thought it is a great idea. Dr. Mahajan sir said that younger generation is tech savvy, and now I think all the older generation is also becoming tech savvy, because this is the only way to communicate with each other. So everybody is now relearning, what one was not forced to learn earlier. And I'm sure it is going to be a great webinar, and the theme is unique and the subject is unique. And so I would request Rahil to please start the same.
Thank you, ma'am. Bhalla sir, can we have a few words of encouragement from you as well?
Yeah, it's very appropriate to have this topic of tech savvy in ophthalmology at this juncture, because that is the roadmap not only to the future, it is roadmap to survive in the present. Because the way things are, we all have to. Yes, we know that the younger generation is already tech savvy, but I won't call them call ourselves oldies, but we also have to learn from you how to go about being tech savvy, telemedicine, teleophthalmology, and how we are going to see the patients, particularly in practice, how they are going to have the payment gateways. All these things are very essential at this juncture. And we have galaxy of very good speakers who can illuminate all of us on this topic. And thankful to Dr. Namrata and Dr. Mahajan sir for collaborating with me to give us knowledge on these topics. Thank you. I think we are all excited to hear from all of you.
Thank you, Mahajan sir. Thank you, Namrata ma'am. Thank you, Bhalla sir, for those words of encouragement. So I would like to introduce our moderators for today. So first we have Dr. Devang. Everybody knows her. She's a very familiar face in ophthalmology. We've all read her articles, her journals. She's working at RP Center, AIMS in New Delhi. We have Dr. Bhupesh Singh, a very dear friend. He's the director of Bharatiya Institute in Delhi. We have Dr. Aditi Ghosh Dastidar with us, a very familiar face, very prolific surgeon, dynamic person, very dear friend of mine. She's working as cornea and ocular surface consultant at I7 hospitals in Delhi. And we have Dr. Abbas with us, who's also working at I7 as a cataract and refractive surgeon. In fact, Dr. Abbas is one of the few who have performed more than 1,000 cataract procedures outside in CSR countries. So I would like the moderators to take the session forward from here.
Thanks, Rahil.
Thank you, Rahil. A very good afternoon to all my seniors, colleagues, and juniors. I hope you all are safe and healthy in this difficult time of COVID-19. Now coming back on today's webinar, in an era where administrative offices, corporate offices, schools, colleges, etc. are acing in their fields using technology, our profession has left no stone unturned in being tech savvy. On this note, I would like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Rahil Chaudhary, who is a cataract and refractive surgeon and also the director of I7 Group of Hospitals, to speak on toric marking using smartphone apps. Over to you, Rahil. Please welcome.
Thank you, Abbas sir, for those kind words. I just started my screen share, and Can everybody see my presentation now?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah, it's there. It's there.
Yes.
So I'll be speaking on toric axis marking with smartphone apps. This is a very useful app. I've been using this app almost daily now. Very accurate results, and you realize how simple this is to use and how perfect toric results you can get using this smartphone app. So basically, modern ophthalmologists today is using two types of marking systems. First, there is a manual marking system, which most commonly we are using the bubble marker or the slit lamps. And then in few institutions, we have the digital marking systems, such as the Vario. So everybody today is either using a manual system or the digital system. And the question has arisen lately that is there room for a third category of device in the middle? Something that is between a bubble marker or a manual system and the digital system. Now the bars are pretty high. In order to really be a third category of device, this device has to be far better at some key things. Well, what kind of things? It has to be highly accurate, something whose accuracy is comparable to digital marking systems. It has to be cost effective. This digital marking system goes into lakhs, so it has to be very cost effective so that everybody can use it. It should be able to give you reproducible results. The results should be consistent, and it should be easy in the hands of a beginner. If there has to be a third category of device, it has to be perfect in all of these things. Otherwise, it has no reason for being. Now, I think we have a third category of device here, and that is a mobile app. And that mobile app is called something as TOR-I. It is a smartphone digital toric marking system. So I'll show you how this device works.
Marking systems such as the
So first you install this app, and when you open this app, you have to fill in the patient details. So you have to fill in the first name, last name, birth date, other required details, and you have to fill in the axis what you want to mark on the eye. So for convenience, I've mounted this on a selfie stick. It is not necessary to mount it. You can even hold it in the hand and it works very smoothly. So the first step is aligning the phone to the app. Very simple. You have some icons on the upper and lower corner of the screen, which guide you into properly aligning the mobile phone to the eye. So I'll just show you. When your phone is properly aligned, if you see the corners, it should show 0 on one corner and it should show a green tick on the lower corner. This means that your phone is perfectly aligned as it is supposed to be. The next step here is to align the patient's head. Now, to align the patient's head, there is a reference line there, which you have to align in such a way that it bisects the cornea equally. So you have to tilt and align the head such that the middle line bisects the cornea. And then once you achieve this position, you go near to one eye and you capture an image. So you see here, the line is bisecting the cornea and we capture an image here. Once the image is captured, we pan and zoom and align the blue marker with the limbus. And we mark the most prominent blood vessel. Now, what this app is actually doing is that it is giving you the degree at which the marked blood vessel is located. So here I've marked this vessel. Now this app will give me the degree at which this blood vessel is located. and taking this vessel as the reference, now I will mark the toric axis which I want to mark. So I'll show you an example as well. So just some other features which are available in the app is that you can also enhance the contrast so that the vessel is more prominently visible. You can save the picture. You can even get a surgeon's view for convenience. So you can flip the picture and get a surgeon's view. Now, what we did was that to analyze the accuracy of this app, we compared this with the manual bubble marker and the Varion, which we took as a gold standard. So we marked the patients with all three devices. The patient was marked with the phone, the app. The patient was marked with Varion, the digital system, and the patient was marked with the bubble marker. So just showing you one example, this was the patient's data, and we were supposed to place the IOL at 72 degrees. So we marked 72 degrees with the Varion with bubble marker and with the app. So you can see here, we have the 0, 180 points with bubble marker. We are marking 72 degrees here. Now you see what is happening here. Now we have the most prominent blood vessel, and taking that blood vessel as a reference, we are marking 126 degrees, which is 72 degrees with the horizontal. So this value the app gives you. So we take that blood vessel as a reference and we mark 126 degree again, which would be 72 degrees with the horizon. So we marked that as well. And you can see here we enhanced the axis. They were fairly close. And then after IOL insertion, we had a Varion overlay, the digital overlay on top of this. And you can see here that the app marks are so accurately aligned with the Varion marks. And in fact, the bubble marks are away from what the accuracy needs to be. So this is an old data. We started off with 20 patients, but now we have done patients in hundreds, and we have realized that it is very, very, very accurate, these systems. So I think this can become a realistic replacement for the expensive. Just a second. Yeah, so I think these apps can become realistic replacements for the expensive equipments that we are using in ophthalmology today. These digital systems go into lakhs and lakhs of rupees, and you can get the same level of accuracy just using these apps. So I'm open to any questions anybody wants to ask.
Thank you, Rahil. It was an insightful presentation. Thank you so much. And there are questions coming from the audiences. We can take them right now, or at the end of the sessions, we can take them also, then only. So whatever the panel suggests.
Few questions. We can take 2 or 3 questions and then we can proceed.
One of the common questions that everybody is asking and eager to know, that how much you are using this app in your practice, daily practice.
Well, I am using it almost daily.
Okay.
What happens is that these apps give you an alternative, a second modality to reconfirm your axis. It is something like when you're doing biometry today, we are using both the optical system, the Lenstar, and we're using the ultrasound system. Okay. And we know that when the two values coincide, we are very sure that we are putting in the right IOL.
Okay.
Similarly, these systems give you another modality to reconfirm. So you can mark your patients with both the bubble marker system if you have the manual system slit lamp, and you can also mark with this app. And when the two axes coincides, you are very sure that the IOL, the axis which you're putting the IOL, that is exactly at the point it should go. So that is the advantage of these apps.
Okay.
I have a question, right?
Yes, sir.
So regarding the use of this app, I'm also using this app from last 1 year maybe. So what about the learning curve for the beginners? Do we need learning curve, or we have to do manual as well as the app based initially, then quickly go to the app based, or app based is sufficient? We don't need manual now.
I think, sir, initially when we are starting to use this app, it is very important that we are marking with the manual system as well. because when you are starting, there'll be a learning curve. There will be issues. Sometimes if you're using Propac P topically to dilate the phenylephrine can constrict the vessels, you can lose on the marked vessel. So it is very important that initially, to get the hang of the app, at least for a month or two, you should have both the systems working. And then maybe you can just switch to pure app. But again, my recommendation would always be to use manual digital system both, so that you are reconfirming the axis where you're going to put the IOS.
Okay.
Dr. Rahil, I also have one question. So, so now I think it's been nearly an year since you are using it. So out of Varion, Bubble Marker and the app, now are you using only the app in all the patients, or how do you decide what to use?
Ma'am, we have Varion and Bubble Markers in a few of our systems. So amongst the 5 hospitals we have, in 2 hospitals we have both the systems, Varion and Bubble Markers. So there we are not using the app. But in other centers where we don't have the Varion, there we try to use app and the manual system both. Again,
and you're getting like equitable results. I mean, you don't have any
very accurate results. Very accurate. No refractive surprises so far.
While in the study which you have done, wow, how much is the difference you find between the Varion marker and your this thing app?
Sir, about 1 to 2 degrees.
1 to 2 degrees.
Yes, and the difference was larger in the Bubble Marker and the Varion. That was to the tune to 3 to 5 degrees.
So given a chance, would you like to recommend that this smart app can replace the expensive systems?
Of course, sir. Of course. I would totally advocate it.
Okay, Rahil, we have a question. One of the doctors, Dr. Raj, is asking that is this app available for the Android and for the Apple software both, yes, or just for the iOS?
It is available for both. Okay. And you can do first 20 cases for free. So when you download this app, the first 20 cases it allows you to do for free.
Okay.
If you want to do further, then there is a subscription that is also not very expensive. I think somewhere to the tune of $2 annual subscription. That is what they're charging. Okay. It is literally for free, virtually free.
Okay.
For the next 100 markings, you have to pay $2, so something like that. And then if you want to take an annual subscription, there's another like $5 to $10 to it. I can't recall it properly, but it is very cheap. It is virtually free to do with this.
Okay. Thank you, Rahil. Any questions from the panel?
Rahil, can you do something post-operatively also to find out whether the IOL has rotated? This is what you showed the pre-operative and the intra-operative. Yes. Is there any mechanism in this app to see whether, to find out whether there has been any post-op rotation of from its intended axis?
So post-op rotation we can do. We can try to find out. Again, we can just take up a prominent vessel and see what degree is that vessel on, and then we can just see if it is aligning with the degree it is supposed to be. But to be very honest, I haven't used this in the post-op evaluation.
Right.
Post-op evaluation, I find more convenient the other digital systems. I think we can move on to the second speaker now.
Okay. Yeah. Now I invite Dr. Aditi to please come and introduce our second speaker. Over to you, Dr. Aditi.
Thanks, Abbas. So I'll be introducing Neha ma'am, who does not require an introduction. She's an excellent surgeon, publisher, researcher. We read her articles, fan of her surgeries. Presently, she's working as a senior consultant Vitro-Retina and Uvea services in I7 Daryaganj, New Delhi. Over to you, ma'am. She'll be telling us about PubMed Search Done Right.
Thanks a lot, Aditi. Thanks to DOS, Dr. Mahajan, Dr. Namrata, Dr. Bhalla for allowing the UC Delhi chapter to associate with DOS and to give us this platform for a very important topic. Thanks to all the moderators and especially to Rahil, who actually took the initiative of taking this forward. So this is, are my slides visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So being part of the, kind of tech savvy, I thought of this topic, PubMed Search Done Right, because we all do use PubMed, and let's see how we can use it more to our advantage or get more out of it. So, medical literature search is also entering the domain of search or perish. Like you have publish or perish, you have search or perish. And a thorough and up-to-date knowledge of your subject is absolutely essential today, not just for academics, but also for patient care. We are all aware of patients who, sometimes Google medicines and procedures and, ask us. So we definitely have to be one step ahead of them and be able to answer their queries in a justified manner. For academics, of course, a search is very important. Only when you read new articles, you will get new research topics and questions. And all of us need it for writing thesis, writing articles, and even while making presentations, we need this in-depth knowledge. So the kind of literature we are looking at varies from lab research to case reports, RCTs, meta-analysis. These are usually the kind of articles we search for. And if you see the above two, that is meta-analysis and systematic reviews, are available from the Cochrane library, which I'm not going to be talking about. And the remaining ones can be searched on Scopus, PubMed, as well as Google Scholar. Now, Google, I would at this point say, has a lot of unvalidated and unverified literature and articles. So at least for academics, we should stick to PubMed or Scopus. And why use PubMed? Because it has a large number of journals encompassing all the languages and covering all the specialities relating to medicine. And with PubMed Central, almost more than 1/3 of the articles, you can get the full text as well. Just remember that abstracts from meetings and conference proceedings are not available in PubMed. So for that, you have to resort to Scopus only. Now, why this talk? As I said, all of us are aware of PubMed. All of us know how to use PubMed. We type in our topic of interest and press enter. And then we get, sometimes hundreds and sometimes thousands of results, and we maybe pick 10, 15 and read them. But this talk is so that you can, use the advanced search builder and get the maximum out of a single search. This talk is so that you can become familiar with Boolean operators, with mesh terms, and use this to your advantage. And also set up features like automatic updates, alerts, etc., which can keep you updated all the time. So I've divided it into 3 parts. What's a basic search, advanced search, and finally I'll sum up with 10 tools which you can take home, which will improve your search. Now, this is the screen we are all familiar with. This is what is known as the legacy version now. At this outset, I'd like to highlight that please sign in. So you can use Google to sign in. It's all free. You can make your own account because a lot of the features are only available if you sign in. So do sign in to PubMed and don't just use it as a visitor. This is part of the legacy version. And now this is the new site which will become the default from this month and will ultimately replace the previous one. So this is the one which I'll be demonstrating today. So how to search PubMed? We have to type terms or key concepts. Now the updated PubMed will automatically match your search words to the mesh terms. I'll be talking about mesh terms later, but what does this mean? This means that earlier, if you were to, for example, type nosebleed, then PubMed would search for articles with nose and articles with bleed. Whereas what you wanted was articles with nosebleed or epistaxis. But now with all their automatic mapping and all that, even if you enter nosebleed, it will automatically search for epistaxis. So that is what I mean. It will match your search terms to search words to appropriate mesh terms. Now, when you type certain words in PubMed, if you put some of these field tags, which we call in square brackets, then PubMed uses it in a different way. For example, if you write cataract surgery and in square brackets TI, then it will only search for those articles which have cataract surgery in the title. Similarly, you can make it title/abstract. And if you have more than one term, then you can connect them with Boolean connectors. This again, I'll be talking about later. But if you don't write anything, then PubMed will automatically assume and. For example, if I write glaucoma, vitrectomy, then it will search for articles with glaucoma and vitrectomy. Okay. You can also search PubMed for authors, in which, for example, I've taken my name. You can use your full name. You can use your surname followed by your initial. You can choose a topic and then your name, or you can write AU in square brackets where it searches for authors. Similarly, if you want to search for a journal name, you can type JOUR in square brackets. So one important thing is, do not use stop words. Sometimes, you tend to write the whole sentence if you're searching. So that is not good, because there are some words like off or in which will be present in almost every article. So they will not be searched by PubMed. So if you want to, for example, search for use of ultrasonography in endophthalmitis, use, of, and in, these are stop words because they are very, very common. So you should only type ultrasonography endophthalmitis. Okay. Now this is, again, like I said, the new PubMed. So I've just for an example done a search on cataract surgery, retinal detachment in the title. Now I haven't written anything here, that means and I've written retina journal. So this search means it will search for articles with cataract surgery and retinal detachment in the title in the journal whose name is retina. And as you can see, I've got a very decent 47 results, which I can further analyze. Now, by default, it will give you a summary. You can also choose an abstract view from here, from the display options, and it will give you the best match first. Now, this is important because the earlier version used to give us the recent most articles first as default, but the new version will give you the default first. So, for example, the first article is from 2000, and then you have 2016, 2005, so on and so forth. There is no need to use punctuation marks over here. Now, here again, whenever you create a search for a topic which is important to you, do create an alert. Now, whenever there is a new article which meets your search criteria, you will get notified. That's important when you're writing an article, because, for instance, I start writing today and I search and I put that in my reference manager or my literature bank, and then an article comes up 2-3 days later. That will ensure that I don't miss it. Now, once you have all these citations, it's possible that you cannot read them at that moment of time. So you can save them. Either you can temporarily save them, that will go to the clipboard for 8 hours, or you can permanently save them to one of your collections. This is again possible only if you signed in. And once you sign in, you have this page where you can see your saved searches, your saved articles organized into collections, and you can also set your own filters. So the previous search only, let's look at the first article which came up. This is the one, and here we see the abstract. Now look at the right hand side. What all information does this give you? Very important is the first one, which is cite. So this allows you to cite this article in all these formats. Now this is very useful if you're writing an article, because then you can just copy paste this in the correct citation, which is very important for thesis articles, as we know. You can also add it to your collections with this single click of a button, the favorites. Then you can check similar articles, you can check the citations of this article, and finally you can see the mesh terms, which will further enhance your search, as I'll be just telling you. This was the basic search that we do. Now, what about an advanced search? So as I said, the Boolean operators are and, or not when they are entered in uppercase, and is the default operator used. So what does this mean? They're very self-explanatory actually. If you type, for example, neoplasms and liver, it will search for the articles which have both. If you type ankle or foot, it will search for articles which have either ankle or foot. And if you put not, for example, knee, not patella, it will take out the articles having patella from those having knee. So mostly we use and you should be careful when you use not. Now coming to the mesh database, this is something important I want to tell you. Now mesh are used by the indexers of PubMed to analyze the content of the articles which are there in Medline. So finding the mesh term for your topic can retrieve more relevant results and ensure that you don't miss articles. Now, how is that? Mesh terms assure that search results will also include the articles about a topic, even when different words are used to describe the topic in the title and the abstract. Now, what does this mean? For example, if let's take the previous example. If I say nosebleed, then it will search for the articles which have nosebleed, but the articles which have epistaxis, it won't search for them. Whereas epistaxis is a mesh term. So if you put that, then it will also search for the articles which have nosebleed. So in that way, you will ensure that your literature search is more complete. Now, the only caveat is that mesh are not applied to the current articles because it takes time for the indexers to put these in. So you should always do a basic search first, and then from that get out the mesh terms like I told you, and then run another search in the mesh database. How do we do that? This is the home page. Here you have the mesh database. So just click on this. You will get taken to this screen. So now you are searching mesh as is given here. You can type anything here. For example, I've typed glaucoma drainage implants. Now, mesh terms will have a variety of subheadings. Here you can see adverse effects, classification, and you can use all of these to run your search further. Now, you can also restrict to mesh major topic, which will take out the minor topics. Now, instead of this, you can also take the shortcut where you can just put MH in square brackets and major. That will also do the same thing. As you can see here, I've done that. Glaucoma drainage implants it will search as a mesh term. Now, just to give you an example, for example, if I search corneal ulcer and drug therapy, then I'm getting somewhere 2200 results. But if I search this as a mesh term, then I get around 1400 results, which means I will get the more relevant results. So that's why it's useful to use mesh terms. So you can also combine your searches using the advanced search builder. This is right just at the search window. Here you'll find this word written advanced. When you go here, it will show you all your previous searches, for example, these. And once you click on them, you'll get add query. It gets added here in your query box. One of the previous searches which you've run. And then you can add all these previous searches with one of the Boolean operators. So it will keep adding those. The next feature which it has, which PubMed has, is the filters, which you'll see here to your left-hand side. So these are quite self-explanatory based on text availability, article attribute, and article type. And you can also go to the additional, these are the additional filters where you can select. This is quite simple actually. Now, again, these filters, they remove the very recent articles. So you must do a basic search first and then go to an advanced search. Now, what is phrase searching? I'll show you with an example. For example, you don't find good mesh vocabulary for your concept, especially if you're searching for something very rare, then a mesh term may not be available. Then what you can do is put your search in quotes. Okay. So, for example, there's a thing called onion sign in ARMD. Now, if I put onion sign, I get 40 results, some of which have nothing to do with ARMD. Like this is appendix, this is thyroid. This is the one which is correct. Okay. Now, I want only the articles related to this. So, I type onion sign in inverted commas. This is called phrase search. And now you see that I'm only getting the ones which are related to ARMD. So this you can do for your rare terms for which the mesh terms are not available. Now, this is a very important feature, especially when you're sitting in the OPD and, you find a rare case or you want to know something, you want to be up to date. Right here, you'll find this term, clinical queries. If you click on this, you get taken to this screen. Now, say, instance, I'm sitting with a patient of juvenile glaucoma and, I just want to brush up my knowledge. If I search through this clinical queries, then I'll get these three categories. That is the clinical study categories, the systematic reviews, and the medical genetics. And this is, it's a less extensive search, but it's good for your quick referencing. Now, finally, there's a thing called single citation matcher. Sometimes you hear about an article in a conference or something, or you know that a particular author has published in some year, but you don't remember the words of the article. Then how do you search for it? You click here on single citation matcher. It goes to this screen, and even if you enter one or two of the fields, there's an auto pop-up. It helps you, and you'll be able to pinpoint your article that you're looking for. So finally, I'd like to end with the 10 tips, which can augment your search. First, always sign in. This will help you to get alerts, to save your searches and build up your collections. Secondly, use field tags and search. Like I said, you can use title, title abstract, mesh, author, journal, all of these. Third, find mesh terms if they are there for your topic of search, and use the mesh database to ensure that you don't miss out on literature. Fourth, if you have more than one term, know how to connect them with Boolean operators. Fifth, use filters to refine your search, like full text, article type, etc. Sixth, combine your previous searches using the advanced search to get the advantage of each of them. Seventh, save your results either temporarily or indefinitely. You can also email your results to fellow researchers, to your thesis guides, and sign up for alerts, like I said. Use the single citation matcher, instead of kind of groping around in the dark. Citation export options, which I told you, are very good when you're writing. It ensures that you cite the article in the proper manner. And if you're sitting in the clinic, you can use clinical queries to your advantage very quickly. So best search leads to best research, and I hope you'll have some take-home points which will help you. Thank you.
Excellent presentation, ma'am. Excellent. Thank you for demystifying PubMed search for all of us. So we have a few questions. So ma'am, the first one is, when to use the mesh database in all cases?
So, as I said, mesh terms may not be available for all, your search, especially if you're looking for something very specialized or very rare. But for general broad categories, like if you're writing or if you're doing a presentation on a broad topic, then first you do a basic search. From that most relevant article, you take out the mesh terms and then do a mesh database search as well.
Ma'am, we have more. So the other one, how to find the specific article we are looking for?
Okay, so for that, the best is to use the single citation matcher. So normally we use Google, we put it in Google, and more often than not, it gives a good hit. But this is also very quick once you get the hang of it. You can, like I said, just even put in the year or the author's name, surname, whatever you remember. And if you remember the journal name, because there's a pop-up, so it will help you. And then with the click of a button, you'll get that specific article.
Thank you so much. Any other panelist or moderator would like to ask something?
Hi, Dr. Neha. So this was a wonderful talk. So just a very basic thing. Searching PubMed is one thing, and we all know, and you have enlightened us also. The main thing is how to get free article. Is there any shortcut or any way by which we can get full text from PubMed or any other site, that is free to access for all?
So as I said, PubMed Central does give around 40% of the articles free. So that, again, if you sign in, it increases a bit more. If you don't sign in, then it's less. Then with AIOS membership, you can get access to 5 or 6 journals more. And with DOS also, though I believe right now the journals are not accessible, but with that also you can get few. So these are the legal ways. So illegal or unethical ways we will not discuss over here.
You can tell that also, so that will be
that we'll discuss later.
Okay, fine. Dr. Namrata is...
Ma'am, your mic is off.
Ma'am, your mic is mute.
So as far as AIOS and DOS is concerned, until last year, for DOS, we had this OVID thing on which the journals were accessible, and until last year, the rule was that they could give username and password to individual IP addresses. This year, what has happened is that internationally also, OVID has taken away this right from everyone, so they will share it only with one IP address. So the thing is that we were sharing the username, password, and Dr. Bhalla is here, was the editor journal of the Delhi Journal of Ophthalmology earlier, and he knows about it. Sorry, library earlier, DOS library earlier, and he knows about it. So from this year, there is a this thing rider that they have put that it will be only shared with single IP address. So it is only shared with the IP address of the DOS office. DOS office for the library is in with Dr. Manavdeep Singh. So you have to send a request to him, and then he will send the articles immediately. Now, when we were talking about this, Sun Pharma came up with the portal, and then they were ready to pay for both AIOS and DOS to get free journals. So that is how then we liaison with them. and you can now get it through AIOS and DOS both, but then you have to send a request. You can't get a username and password for both. That is, the thing.
And the request to be sent to
There are
whom?
other ways of doing. I know these youngsters are very good at it. Sometimes when I don't get the articles, I ask one of them to get, and I don't know how. They just go, and there are sites on which you can get it. One site I think I can say is
Sci-Hub.
SCI
HUB.
Publishing or something like that. They quickly get it from somewhere. I don't know. Whenever we ask for it. And of course, there are online access also. Journals are there. If you are members of societies, then you can get journals. Some of the common ones you should become members, because for fellows and residents, it's hardly any, it's not too much of a cost.
I think we had, yes, rightly said by Dr. Namrata, we had very wonderful arrangement with Ovid.
Dr. Balla,
But yeah, we had wonderful arrangement by Ovid.
Admin, please unmute Dr. Balla.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So we had very wonderful arrangement with Ovid.
He's not listening.
Utilizing their services so nicely that they suddenly realized that we are asking for a bit too much. And now in this era of COVID, I think Ovid has been totally eaten up by COVID. So we are not getting those facilities, but rightly said that it's advisable for the younger generation to become members of these societies, DOS and AIOS, so that you can have access to all these journals. And there are other ways also that even I get the journals which I am not able to access. My residents somehow they arrange for me, and we get. I think Dr. Neha, we can take her help also in telling us how to get access to. And many in this era of COVID, they have made their journals accessible to all, like JCRS, which was accessible. We all can access articles from JCRS like that. It is possible.
I'd like to pitch in for one thing. If we have a account on ResearchGate, it allows for us to go and ask the authors directly. So
Yes.
they can share and almost all the articles are available there. At least the preprint stage they can easily share without any copyright issues.
I was just going to say that, and otherwise even the abstract tells you the corresponding author and their email address, and usually if you mail them, they will send you the full text. But yes, if you want to scroll through a large number of articles, or if you're collecting, then it might become cumbersome. But like Dr. Namrata said, a lot of the pharma companies, they also help you with some articles. Then if you have friends abroad who are doing fellowship or residency, then they can also help you, because the institutions might have subscribed to particular journals. So, I mean, usually you can manage, but for the bulk of it, you can try PubMed Central or through AIOS, and AIOS only now, no longer DOS.
DOS also, both are giving AIOS and DOS.
Ma'am, we can't scroll the entire journal. We have to send the request of the particular article to the library officer, so that we can send. But for the entire journal, we can, I believe, through to AIOS.
So maybe now it's time to move on to the next talk, and it is by Dr. Nilesh Kumar. Nilesh is a final year DNB resident at Lotus Eye Hospital, NCT. He's an editor, and he'll be talking about direct imaging of gonium by smartphone and DIGS. It's the world's first smartphone-based gonium imaging device. His current area of interest is smartphone imaging and medical retina, with over 30 peer-reviewed publications in this field. So Nilesh.
Thank you, Bhupesh sir, for that introduction. First, I would like to thank DOS, Namrata ma'am, Bhalla sir, Mahajan sir, and especially Rahil sir and Neha ma'am for giving me this opportunity. I will be talking about viewing angle the smart way, and I do have a financial. Are my slides visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So I do have a financial disclosure to make. We are making the device and selling it. So I'll be talking first about gonioscopy. For last 105 years since we know the modern gonioscopy, it has been fairly stagnant. The glaucoma has progressed. The visual field analysis, the retinal nerve fiber layer analysis, that has progressed. But the gonioscopy itself has been stagnant art. And you can see with the topic that a talk that Dr. Wallace Allward gave at AEH Pondicherry few days back, the gonioscopy is still in state of art. After 100 years, it should be routine by now. It is more than over a century, and still it is state of art. So, what are the major roadblocks that are preventing gonioscopy from becoming a routine investigation?
First is the enigma of glaucoma. We very often see that everybody treats glaucoma, nobody knows glaucoma, how it is. Or gonioscopy is the most difficult art you have to achieve in OPD procedures. But that is not, once you start doing it, it's very easy and it's very logical. The only thing is that you have to start doing it. But for doing that, it is slit lamp dependent. You need to have a slit lamp. And for most of the training centers, at least in the periphery, the slit lamp is not that readily available, and it's not everybody does not get a chance. And then there are lack of trainers also. I think we need to move from now direct the consultant teaching the resident. We need to move on to the old Hofstede dogma, that is see one, do one, and then teach one. So that if a resident knows gonioscopy, other resident or other fellows can. I'm telling my perspective from resident. It will be different once we become consultants. But as a resident, we can have that see one and then teach one. And then there is time factor. The gonioscopy itself takes time. So if a resident does, then the patient might refuse for the consultant. Or if the consultant does first, then the patient might not allow the resident to again do the same procedure. And knowing that training, it really becomes rare. So as it can be seen that only 81% of junior residents know how to do gonioscopy. Out of those ophthalmologists, the consultants who are doing 25%, they are not confident in their skill. And again, from Dr. Wallace Albert's book, it has been said that 50% of the patients that are visiting glaucoma clinic in USA, they are not getting a gonioscopic evaluation due to paucity of time. So the surrogates which are used is Van Herrick technique, and I think Van Herrick technique is fairly deceitful. We can't rely on that to make a glaucoma diagnosis. Intersegmentosity and UBM. If slit lamp is gold, then this might be uranium. It's that rare to find in training centers. And then NIDA came up with a gonio imaging device that cost 20 lakhs rupees just to take that gonio image. And a cheaper alternative is 5 lakh is gonio pen. That is fairly portable, but it still requires a laptop or a computer to be carried along with it. So that is all in OPD setup. When we go to a camp where we don't even have vision chart, how are we going to do gonioscopy? And it's very common. Glaucoma prevalence rate in India is 10% with equal amount of open angle and close angle glaucoma. So in a camp, we are going at least 5 or 10 patients of close angle we are going to get, shallow angle at least. So how are we going to see that? The solution has to be practical. It has to be convenient to perform. It should be time efficient, and it should give reproducible result from me and for anybody who is doing that. So smartphone, that is the solution. Everybody is carrying a smartphone, so you don't need anything else. You just need your gonio lens to be carried in your pocket and a smartphone which you anyway carry. That is it. You don't require anything else. That I called as direct imaging of gonio mirror by smartphone, or DIGS, DIGS. So this is a procedure. If there is no lag, I think the video will be very clear. It's very simple. You put the slit lamp on side. You don't need your slit lamp. Just put a drop of topical anesthesia on the patient. Your gonio lens goes inside. Make sure that your phone is the stock camera app. No other app is required as of now. Just center it. Flash should be on. You click, and you have the image. It's that simple. It can be done by anybody. We are trying, once the technology or the device gets perfect, even the optometrist in your center, they can perform it and put it on the EMR, and then you can just review it and see that which patient needs a proper gonioscopy or any other intervention. So it works with 2 mirror, it works with 3 mirror, it works with 4 mirror. These are 3 mirror images. Fairly easily you can see the gonio anatomy. But 3 mirror has an inherent magnification. So it gives a somewhat clear image. But the beauty of 4 mirror is with a single click, you are getting 360 degree of image. It works with Xiaomi and Nokia. These are the lower end of Xiaomi and Nokia, which I have clicked with. The quality depends on the smartphone which you are using and the quality of the camera it has. So you can see OnePlus and iPhone on your right-hand side. It's fairly clear. It can be done in supine position, in sitting position. It can be done in outreach camp, OPD, anywhere. So despite being the most read, one of the most read articles on Journal of Glaucoma, the problem was nobody tried it. Once I put it out, not many people were trying it and getting back to me that what is, and I was not able to know why this is happening, despite being everybody at that time when I explained it, told it is very interesting, but nobody tried it. So I went to my mentor, Dr. Ashish Sharma, who has innovated MI RET cam. So he told me it is still a jugaad. It's not a innovation right now. A product which is very easy to use for everybody, and which gives more with a lesser amount of resource. A product like that will make it a true innovation. So we present to you after 9 months of R&D, world's first smart breast gonio imaging device. I can't demonstrate right now the device because of the patent issue, but you can see this is the optic housing where the optic is housed. On this side where you can see the logo, the smartphone attaches to this side, and the opposite side, your gonio lens, your 3-mirror, 4-mirror, it attaches, and you can just simply, as you click on the normal without any device, you click it like that. It just gives you an inbuilt, it has an inbuilt optic, so it gives you a more optical magnification than a digital magnification. So
I think we've lost the audio from the other.
Dr. Nilesh.
Audio is not there.
So, Devang, can you, meanwhile, when we get him back, can you comment on this device?
Yes, ma'am. It looks good, because as he told that the gonioscopy, in fact, when we teach our residents, we normally have a teaching mirror or a teaching arm in our center, but as he has rightly pointed out, that many centers, they don't even have a slit lamp, or even if they have a slit lamp, they don't have a side mirror to teach. So this app, if it is connected to smartphone, I think it is a very good teaching tool, and the images that he's showing are very good. I mean, it looks very good. So it looks very promising, and if it is equally cheaper, I think it's much better, than the other alternatives like the Gonio pen or the ASOCity, which are very bulky instruments and very expensive and out of reach from many people.
Dr. Bhalla, will you want to say anything?
Yeah. It appears to be a very promising thing, because I think you can zoom it and see the magnified view of the angle also. And particularly in outreach centers and other places where a slit lamp may not be available, and also as a teaching tool, it appears to be very promising. Only thing is, there must be some learning curve. You have to be very still holding it. I'll just like to see who demonstrates in further slides.
I think because from the practitioner point of view, and the person who are going to start the practice, smartphones are with everybody, and these instruments seems to be very good. At least a person who is not doing the gonioscopy routinely, they can just click the image or just click for you, and then you can assess whether it is done or not. Not a saving of time.
Yes. So what I think is the main advantage of this tool is that you can click the picture, and you can remove the error that is between the two observers, because you cannot document gonioscope. What is the finding between the two observers? So you have to rely on others' finding. But with a picture, you can take others' opinion also, and you can make a decision together. So that is the other good part of this app.
Sorry, sir. I think my Wi-Fi broke. I just.
Doesn't matter. You're back. We discussed things in absentia, so you can resume from wherever you were.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I'll just restart. It is a great patient education tool as well. I think when the patient walks in, primary angle closure suspects they're asymptomatic. They don't want anything. They just came for refraction, and suddenly you see that their angle is closed. You start convincing them, and they are not convinced at all because they are asymptomatic and they need EAC PI. So once you tell them, it is very difficult. But once you show them, it's very easy. This patient I saw in a camp, not even in OPD, in a camp, I showed him that, see, your angle is completely closed. Only a quarter of your angle, trabecular mesope is seen faintly over here. Next day, he was in the OPD in the morning at 8 o'clock. With pilocarpine, he has already put from home. So that's the beauty of once you start image-based counseling. So you can see only half of the patient agree when you do a verbal counseling for YAC-PI. But with this device, if you are going to use, it's around 86 to 90% of the patients who are agreeing for YAC-PI. That's one eye saved at a time from glaucoma. And it's very easy to use. It takes only 4 or 5 patients for you to start using it because it's nothing. You just have to click. Everybody clicks the photograph from smartphone. So there's nothing major to be learned over here. The only thing is to start analyzing the finding. So these are the few other gonioscopic anomalies which we saw. You can see a fairly wide angle recession over here. We can see a small iridodialysis cleft that can be seen on the right side image. Then a glimpse of disc when the patient is dilated, but I won't comment on bony anatomy in this patient. But on the right hand side, you can see how beautiful a hill of peripheral anterior synechiae is seen on the backdrop of a widely open angle with highly pigmented trabecular meshwork. And a sample SC line can be seen over here. This is the plateau iris configuration. Then this is the inverse hypopyon beautifully reflected on the inferior mirror. A silicon bubble again on in the backdrop of a highly pigmented trabecular meshwork. This patient had undergone multiple VR surgery with highly pigmented trabecular meshwork with high IOP, and then we are having a adherent leukoma with which can be reflected on the left hand side mirror. And the major criticism that came my way, this was first suggested by Dr. Prabhu Bhaskaran, who innovated XNIT. He told me that this is giving a very bright flashlight. So the open angle, the closed angle might open up because of that. So how are you going to overcome that? So it took around 2 months for me to think about it. And then I thought that every mobile is having a slow motion video. So we take a slow motion video, we put the flash off and on, so we can get a more physiological response than the indentation. As we know, in the indentation, we can just open, we can press and we can open. If you put more pressure, the anatomy distorts. And this is more physiological. You see how beautifully the pupil is constricting. On the superior side, you see how beautifully the posterior trabecular meshwork is coming into the view. It's very nice. It's completely physiological. What the patient will feel in the mid-light and the start and the end, everything you can see. That is the beauty of dynamic gonio imaging. Hopefully, the paper will come in few weeks' time. So, to conclude, it's a fast and efficient, low-cost innovation. It provides you for documentation, for follow-up. It has inbuilt teleconsultation capabilities. Anyone sitting in the camp or periphery can send it to the consultants and ask the patient needs to come to the OPD or not. It's a great patient education tool and resident training tool. And this might be the future, because in the COVID era, we don't know. Somebody might take a gonio selfie and send. So that can be another avenue to in the future. So you can't imagine something that doesn't exist in the universe. That is the philosophy that I believe in. If I am imagining something, it has to be in the universe and it will come into our time very soon. So till then, keep imagining, keep innovating, keep digging. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, these are the for any commercial inquiry, this is the contact address, and any academic questions I will be happy to take. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank
you. Unmute.
You have to unmute yourself, Dr. Namrata.
I'm saying congratulations. That was a great innovation.
Thank you, ma'am.
The cams and all, you can just, the patients, the gonioscopy angles can be seen. Very nice.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Nilesh, 2 questions. One is that you have to decrease the slit size has to be 1 millimeter and in ambient illumination.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is one person to hold the gonioscope, and second, will that be more give us more information? And second is, how do you do indentation gonioscopy and manipulative gonioscopy? Because one person, I think it will be logistically more difficult to have that sort of information for indentation and manipulative.
Yes, indentation can be tried, sir. Indentation can be tried with it. It is no problem. The device actually holds. So you have both hands free. The device is like gonioscopy, and then it just goes and attaches on the camera. So it is completely, one hand is almost completely free. As we do on slit lamp, same principle we can apply on that. The slit part we are still working on, sir. We are trying to make it same. My father has the concern that this is not the end. You have to improve it, because slit lamp, the quality of the image also has to improve, and the slit lamp has to come in. So we are working on that. Hopefully next 1 or 2 years we are going to achieve that, because it's a little difficult. We have to decouple 2 persons. Again, it becomes difficult. Somebody else holding the gonio and somebody else holding the illumination source. It becomes a little difficult to just get everything in the same axis. So we are working on that. So hopefully we will be able to deliver it in the next 1 to 2 years.
Anyway, it's a wonderful innovation.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Nilesh, I had a
Yes,
query. First of all, I would like to know what is the cost of this device, of this?
Ma'am, right now we are pre-booking at around 14,999, and once we wanted to start the shipping by June, but now that is not possible. So once we start shipping, it will be around 24,999. Right now, if somebody books, it is 14,999.
The second thing is how do you adjust the magnification? Are there any settings to change the magnification? Are there different settings for it?
Ma'am, the inbuilt optics is giving around 2x magnification. That is sufficient. The whole screen fills up with the Gonio image. If somebody wants to just take one mirror with direct magnification, then we have to go for digital zoom. The periscopic zoom that is coming in the current generation of smartphones, that gives somewhat more magnification, but that is not very good. Best is to take the magnification, go on the computer screen. You can see the details very clearly. On the mobile, it won't be clear, but once you transfer it to your laptop, it will be very clear.
And thirdly, I would also like to know that how do you control the illumination? As you've shown that as you shine on the light of the smartphone, the pupil constricts. So the gonioscopy and angle closure is very, it's very, you have to do it in ambient illumination. If you do it in a very bright illumination, you might miss angle closure, which is very common in India. So how do you avoid that?
We are working on an app that combines everything. So it gives a smartphone the ability to have the flashlight control. Right now, it's available only in iOS, but we are working to get that into an Android app. And with the MI RedCam app that is existing, we are trying to incorporate this controlled illumination so that we can get the ambient, at least the minimum light that is possible to take photograph. These smartphone sensors are very good. Even if I don't shine anything, it will take the photo. It will take the photograph. But for the details, I think we need the flash. We are just trying to work on the level, the minimum level that we will require.
Okay, nice talk and best of luck for future.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Nilesh, one more question. Which gonioscope will you recommend for this kind of gonioscopy? Will you recommend Zeiss 4 mirror or Goldman?
Zeiss 4 mirror. Yes, the Volkmann 4 mirror works the best, sir. I have tried Vogue 4 mirror, sir. I have tried with every other. The Vogue 4 mirror is working the best. I want to try the 6 mirror also. I think that will give even the angles that we are missing on the corners, but I have not worked with that yet.
Congrats, Dr. Nilesh. It's really a good innovation. And with a smartphone, everything is getting smart.
Very easy to do, so that's the beauty.
Yeah, it's actually with the smartphone and the very good cameras on the smartphone. Now the things are getting totally different nowadays. And how to use it, we have young people to tell us. Yeah, that's right.
But everybody can use it, sir. It's not, the age is not a foundation at all.
You can go for next talk.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Nikhil Gotmare. He's a senior resident in Cornea and Refractive Surgeries Unit at Guru Nanak Eye Center. His special areas of interest are smartphone-based ophthalmic photography and videography. Today's topic will be anterior segment smartphone photography. Over to you, Dr. Nikhil. Welcome.
Admin, can you unmute Dr. Nikhil?
Sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to thank Team DOS and Team UC for giving me this opportunity to talk. And the topic of my discussion is anterior segment smartphone photography. And I'll be discussing it in two parts, and on why we should do it and on how we can do it. So coming to the first part on why we should do it, first is documentation. We have so many cases in OPD which we can document And I find it especially useful when I'm following up my cases of corneal ulcer. You can see if your hypopyon is decreasing, your ulcers are getting clear, and you can follow up your surgical cases with photographs, and you can self-evaluate your clinical treatment and surgeries with help of photographs. This picture, it received the second prize in IRSI last year, and you can send your pictures to ophthalmic photography competitions. You can use it for publications. There are specific section in many journals which have photo essay or pictorial based. You can send it there. In emergencies, many times residency face this problem that they need to take a senior's opinion or some other specialty opinion, but that is not available. Here, smartphones can come to rescue. They can click pictures and send, and they can discuss on how to manage the case, how to approach the surgery. And sometimes also in emergency, you get cases where you cannot make the patient sit on slit lamp. In that cases also, you can smartphone can take pictures and help you. I also use the smartphone photography for planning my surgeries. Here I discuss with my senior how I can do the surgery, how I can approach the patient, and my first TPK when I send it to my seniors and discuss how I can approach this case. And you can share good pictures with your juniors, undergraduate, postgraduates. When you have good pictures, you can show them. You can show them sunflowers, sunsets, and corneal findings and iris findings. And also you can get cases which don't report to you. Someone who is not so tech savvy sends it to you to take pictures, and that way you can get to see those cases also. So whenever you get a classic case or interesting case, don't miss out, because we don't want to miss out. You take pictures, share them, maybe you can publish them, and in future you would want to write a book and start a YouTube channel. You should keep your options open. And also smartphones have become an integral part of our lives. They are always there with you. They are so accessible, and they are getting better day by day. And already smartphone photography is commonly performed, but not as commonly as it should be. And it's an adjunct, not replacement. It's always better to take your senior's opinion in person, take the patient to senior, discuss case. And also if you have a good slit lamp mounted camera system, you can take the pictures there. But if in cases where it is not available, you can always go for smartphone photography. And also in these times of social distancing, it can increase the distance between you and patient, and this can possibly offer some help, especially when using face shield. We have faced this difficulty in examining the patient on slit lamp, and this may offer some solution to it. So how do I do it? First thing is to know your phone so that you can use it to its full potential. Most of us, we start using the phone just with the factory setting, and we never see what settings the phone is on. So we can always go and check if the maximum resolution is selected for the camera, and we need to go there, select the maximum resolution. We need to see if there is any voice command available in our phones. It really helps to take stable photographs, and grid lines should always be on. It helps you center to the lesion of importance. And the technique which I follow for smartphone photography, this is how I do it on slit lamp. The first thing you need to do is to make the patient sit comfortably, so that there is minimum movement, and it increases your chances to get good photograph. And whenever possible, allow the patient to blink, and if you are holding the lid with your hand, you can just close the eyes in between so that you spread the tear film, and the patient becomes comfortable. Adjustment of light would be depending on lesion, diffused illumination, slit illumination, retro illumination. As we do for slit lamp examination, we do for slit lamp photography. The same way we adjust light, and then we proceed for focusing the slit lamp. Now, focusing it with one eye is important. Usually what we do is we focus with both the eyes while while doing slit lamp examination for binocularity. But here we will be taking the photograph from one eyepiece. So it's important to pre-decide which eyepiece you will be using for photograph and close the other eye and focus with that eyepiece. Or you can see in which eyepiece the image is better, and then you can take photograph from that eyepiece. Next step would be to adjust your phone, focus your phone once your eye is adjusted. Here we do it as we do it for 90D or 20D examination, in which we take the lens close to eye and then move it towards ourselves till we get good focus. Here also we take the smartphone's camera near the eyepiece and slowly come towards yourself till you get a good focus. If there are shadows in periphery, it indicates that it is eccentric. Once you adjust it, the shadows will disappear, and that will tell you the focus is good. Once you get the focus, you need to stabilize your hand. This is how I stabilize my hand. You need to keep your eyepiece, and so that the hands are stable and get a picture. And while clicking the picture, many times the phone shakes and the image obtained is not so good when you are clicking the button to capture the picture. And here's where the voice command can help. If it's available in your phone, you should definitely try it. This was the photograph I could take of the demonstrating individual. Here, this is the technique which I use for taking picture for here. You need to first stabilize the patient, make him stand against the wall or sit comfortably so that the movement is least, and then stabilize your hand on his forehead so that your phone is still, and then you can take it in or you can take it in flashlight. Flashlights are always better because in a near window you will get reflections. In a dark room, using flashlight, you will get it without reflections. Also, this we are doing without slit lamp, so we will be depending on the zoom capability of your phone. So if the capability of your phone of zoom is not so good, you can always use clips, which are magnifying lenses, easily available on Flipkart or Amazon at reasonable prices. Coming to technique with slit lamp adapter, what this slit lamp adapter does is it stabilizes the phone and sets a particular focus. These are also easily available at reasonable prices at Flipkart, and you can just mount your phone on it, and you focus just once, and then you can click pictures, and this is also very helpful while taking videos. So slit lamp settings you can use for your advantage. Here you can see how I use the magnification of slit lamp to my advantage by taking this high magnified images, and also slit you can use to your advantage. Here are some slit images, and these images are with direct flashlight of phone, and same using a slit lamp light. And this is a direct image with flashlight. This is a slit lamp image. Again, you can see so many reflections over the cornea. This is because the room lights were on, and if those are off, you can get better pictures. Again, I would like to give some emphasis on technique. The phones are definitely important, which phones you are using, but technique is also important. Flagship phones are like I say flags of cataract surgery. Femtolaser is obviously good to have, but it is not essential for giving your patient 6/6 vision. You can give it with a good technique in SICS and phaco also. Similarly, you can take good photographs with your phone also, whichever phone you have, if the technique is proper. And just a small tip on what to do after you take photographs. Once you start taking photographs, your smartphone gallery will be an ocean of photograph, and you need to organize it. You need to keep the photos in separate folders so that there is no tsunami of photos in your phone. And also it's very helpful to click the picture of OPD card or discharge card of the patient and keep it along with the photos in that folder, so that whenever you come after few months also, you know what the diagnosis was, or otherwise it gets very confusing. So the skills a resident should have in modern era of technology, I think one can add the smartphone ophthalmic photography also to it. And I'd like to thank Dr. Vaibhav Nagpal, who helped me make this demonstration video. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Nikhil.
Thank you.
Any questions from the panel?
In fact, I would like to add that smartphone interior segment eye photography I'm using almost every day to give online consultations. So even I tell my patients to wide open the eye, switch on the flashlight and click a picture. And it is very, very useful when you want to give online consultations.
Nikhil, excellent presentation. I have a doubt. So many of our viewers, they want to know any specific thing you have to look before buying the smartphone.
First thing you would see which the camera resolution which is present, the megapixels. Any decent camera with at least 12 megapixel would do, and specifically use C for voice command because it helps in getting stable images. So that would be great if that is present.
And anything specific for video as compared to photography? You make videos as well, right?
Yes, ma'am. For videos, the attachment, if you can have attachment, that is better. It would give you more stability during videos. Otherwise, if you are stabilizing it with hand, you can edit the only 10% of the video would be good. So you can edit the other parts. So editing becomes much more important while taking videos.
Thank you.
Dr. Nikhil, in today's COVID era, I mean, first of all, I would like to congratulate. It was a good talk. But in today's COVID era, where all of us are using using slit lamps and also seeing patients, I want you to give away a message how to disinfect your smartphone after using each patient, which is very important to give it at this point of time.
There are alcohol swabs available for clean wipes, which are available to disinfect the phone, and I usually do it with the Sterilium or whatever is available in OPD also to disinfect the screen.
One thing I would just want to add on here, that 70% alcohol swab is the best to clean your smartphones. If you use Sterilium, that Sterilium also has some lubricating properties. So it would leave a greasy layer on your phone.
Very true.
Not to use 1% hypochlorite, because that is very, very corrosive. It will corrode all your mobile lenses, mobile screen. So the best way to sterilize your smartphone would be using 70% alcohol swabs.
Yeah.
Isopropyl alcohol for electronic disinfectant, ma'am. That is available on Amazon also. Like just order and 500 ml bottle. That works for around a year.
Yeah, true. And after cleaning with all these alcohol, what I've seen that you always have some layer which is there. So best is after you wipe it off, just wipe off the camera with a clean cloth. So whatever droplets or that goes away.
Nikhil, I have just a small question. So regarding the adapter you're talking about, so is there any one design particular that we have to use, or there are many designs, we can choose any of them?
So there are many designs available, and starting from as low as 700 rupees. This I bought for around 1,000 rupees, and there are many designs available, and any design would work. Basically, what they are doing is just stabilizing the phone.
So
they are not.
The device will work on all the slit lamps, or
yes, so these are universal adapters. They are used on microscope also, on operation theater microscopes also. You can use them. They are with universal same size, and you can use it on any slit lamp.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikhil, can you name any one of these adapters, like you said, reasonable cost, which adjust both through the slit lamp and operating microscope?
Yes, so the one I'm using is from GoSky, GoSky company, and there are many Indian-made adapters also available.
I think we will proceed to the next speaker.
Next speaker. Okay. So I would like to introduce the next speaker. The next speaker is Dr. Manik Bhattacharya. And he is a pass out from Donanak Eye Center, and he's currently working as an associate consultant in anterior segment and glaucoma in the Center for Sight. And he's executive member of UC, and he's a very active young ophthalmologist I have known. And now over to you, Manik.
Thank you, Dr. Anu, for this very sweet introduction. And thank you, DOS and UC, for having me here. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes. Yes, Manik, you can start.
Okay. So most of the speakers have covered individual apps and which are specifically designed either for the calculation or for making the anterior or the posterior segment imaging. So I would like to cover a few more of these apps. Actually, there's a lot that you can do with your smartphones. The role of the smartphones in the evidence-based medicine, professional education, patient education, and also for remote patient monitoring cannot be looked away. As you go to any app store, there are these multiple apps. So we can segregate them as those which are the patient testing apps, the patient education apps, the ophthalmic calculators, the electronic medical record keeping apps, the ophthalmologist training apps, and the reference apps. A word of caution here that most of these apps have been made without professional input, and they need to be validated by the particular user before putting them into the clinical practice. Now, coming on to the patient testing apps, most of all, the measuring of visual acuity, if you're going to an iCam where you don't have these Snellen charts with you, or you're going for a bedside consultation, then also you can use these handy apps to take the visual acuity. Now, two of the apps which I'll just show here are the Peak Acuity, which is for the Android users, and the iChart Pro for the iOS platform. The Peak Acuity generates the visual acuity very accurately and also gives the values in both Snellen and the logMAR values. And it can also provide the equivalent of finger counting, hand movement, or light perception. So once your patient is seated comfortably, you measure a distance of 2 meters. And after closure of one eye of the patient, the patient will be shown these tumbling ease, and he has to point out the direction. And you'll swipe your phone in the direction in which the patient is pointing, irrespective of whether he's correct or incorrect. I'll just show you a very small video. So once you explain to your patient, then you go to the testing point of testing distance of 2 meters. So that's the point where you need to stop. So that indicates that your test has come to an end. You can share the score with your patient immediately. And it also gives a simulated vision so that you can tell the patient as to what the person with a normal vision would be able to see immediately. And also share it with him on his whatever social media platform he's actively using. Okay, the second one is the iChart Pro. Here, it's basically pairing up an iPhone with an iPad, where the iPad will have all these charts, and it provides you multiple charts, and your iPhone will act as the remote control. So, again, a very small video here. So you can see once you project this on an iPad screen with your iPhone being used as a remote, you can swipe the letters, and also you can flip the letters all the time so that there is no problem with the patient memorizing the charts. Okay. The second part is the color vision testing. Again, in the color vision testing, once you search on any Android store, you will be bombarded with so many results, but 2-3 of them which are quite handy to use are these. So the first one is that color blindness test, where the Ishihara it is based on the Ishihara charts, and you'll be holding the patient, the phone in front of the patient's eye, and he has to identify the object. And also it can give you the protonyms and the deuteronyms, the type of the color vision deficiency is there. Interestingly, they also have an animal shape for the children. This is another app, Colorblind Test, which is based on the Munsell test, and it's more accurate for determining the type of the color blindness. Then there are the apps for contrast sensitivity, which can be used from a distance of 40 centimeters to 4 meters. The grating lines are there, and these can be simply used in your clinics to explain to the patients with multifocal intraocular lenses or multifocal contact lenses the differences in the contrast, if any, that they're experiencing. Then there is also the LOCS3 app, which can be used for your nuclear grading. Again, this is you can explain to the patient about the grade of the cataract. Another app which is very useful for the posterior segment imaging is the Ullman Indirect app. Now this app is available now only on both the Android and the iOS platform, and basically you can capture very high quality fundus images with it. Very small video showing the amazing results that you can obtain with it. Okay, so coming to strabismus, you can also use an app called the 9Gaze app to take very accurate 9Gaze photos of your patient. Then in this app, you'll be getting specific instructions. You can ask the patient to look in the particular gazes, and then it will build up a 9Gaze collage, which you can again save with the patient details for further accessing. Also, there's this app for Park's 3-step test, in which you just need to see which eye, you just need to fill in details about which is the more hyperdeviated eye and the gaze and the tilt in which it is worsening. So it will give you a near accurate result, near plausible explanation as to which may be the paralyzed muscle. Then this is another interesting app which is recommended by the Academy on its website. Top 10 to be downloaded app for all the young ophthalmologists. So sometimes a patient with a particular syndromic profile walks into your clinic, and then you can capture an image of this patient and put it in their database. And also, as you can see on this side, there are certain features that you need to select whether these are there in your patient or not. So it will try to accurately match to their database a particular syndrome to which the patient can belong. Then there are the patient education apps. The most important would be in which patients of glaucoma and most of these chronic eye diseases, in which they have to put a number of the topical medications, and so that patients can set up a reminder This iDrop alarm is one of the most frequently used app, but there are other ones also which are there on all both the platforms. They can also set up a schedule in advance prior to the surgery. Then there's an extensive database for all the topical medications, and then once you have fed in the right data, then it will automatically set in the alarm and also try to keep the interval between two medications. Again, there is a step-by-step techniques, instructions which are given to the patients on how to best put the medications in the eye. Then there are the ophthalmic calculator apps, one app which has been very nicely covered by Dr. Rahil. Apart from that, this eye handbook is actually a very comprehensive app, which is both a reference tool as well as a diagnostic tool, in which it covers a whole lot of things. It has got multiple calculators, ICD 9 and 10 coding, the link to journals, the link to the academic site, eye atlases, diagrams, dictionary, mnemonics, and also based on the vision symptoms and treatment guidelines, which you can just carry to your clinics. Then coming to some ophthalmologist training app. So one app for the residents to just start with the cataract surgery training would be the Cataract Simulator. I suppose this is no longer available on an Android platform, but still on the iOS platform it's available because I've used it previously. Here you can actually get a simulated feel of making your first capsulorhexis, and so you can see how the procedure goes. It's also, you can time your procedure and make adjustments in the parameters according to the pupil size, the capsular tension, and the tear direction. There are two modes. One is the finger mode, another is the forceps mode. And also there's a phaco simulation in which gives you a feel of the divide and conquer. And also for the residents, Academy recommends this app, Opto Questions. It's like a question bank having a whole lot of questions for most of the international exams, but it's a paid app. But it's got one of the widest databases for all the questions available for these exams. So apart from the apps which I've tried to cover, there is also the amblyopia screening app, which is called the Go Check Kids app. There is the OCT browser app. There is the VR-based perimeter, which is known as the Periscreener. There are the multiple IOL power calculators, the apps for DR screening of leukocoria. So there's endless things that you can do with your smartphone. So I would like to sum up by saying that the innovative role of smartphone technology and its use in research, education will make this a future of ophthalmology and medicine. However, a word of caution has always to be there, that since these are not true for all the apps, but a lot of them have been made without an ophthalmologist's guidance, and hence you need to calibrate it for your patients. Thank you.
That was a wonderful presentation, Dr. Manak. In fact, especially the visual acuity testing app, because these days we are giving a lot of online consultations during this COVID times. And when we are online consulting patients, not having visual acuity becomes a major limiting factor.
Right.
So I think these can be used very conveniently by the patients as well, and can give you a good idea. At least gross visual acuity we can get to know by these apps. So can we have the questions from the moderators, please?
So there's a question from the audience. They have asked, do you know of any app for visual field testing?
There is the VR Periscreener, which is used for the visual field testing in the peripheries. We have actually used that in some of our patients, and for that's like a portable screener. It is like a VR, virtual reality, in which the patient needs to wear it, and then he gets a simulated visual field, which is conducted in a much shorter time. The time duration is around 5 to 7 minutes. It reduces much to that low next time. So it's a very good screening tool, actually.
So basically, you're talking about that AVA virtual perimeter.
Right, Periscreener. Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's a bit costly. It's around 3 to 4 lakhs as far as
Right.
I know. Apart from this, there's another app which is mainly for iPad as of now, for iOS, and they're actually developing it for Android. So if that comes, I think that will be free of cost.
Okay.
I think Melbourne Retina Fields MRS also does 10-2 and 24-2. Can we just share screen and have all the panelists together? So MRF, I think they started for Android now. Earlier it was only iOS. So they're also doing 10-2 and 24-2. As well. It has good reviews. There's a question on Facebook about the link for the adapter, Dr. Nikhil. If you could just share that on Facebook. They want to know the link for the adapter, for the Slitland adapter on Flipkart or Amazon, if it's possible.
Dr. Manak, there's another question for you. It says, does the brightness change affects the test results of visual acuity and color vision?
No.
It should. For color vision, it should, I guess.
No, for the color vision, you're saying about the.
It says for both vision testing and color vision.
No, but are you saying about the ambient conditions of the test?
The question says, does the brightness change affect the test results? Basically, with the change of the brightness, if somebody's doing a test at home, and he's doing it in a dim light, and and he's telling you the result, and somebody's doing an ambient light, and he's telling you the result. So the question is that whether the change in the light condition affect your visual acuity or color vision test.
But I suppose for the color vision, it has to do with the brightness of the screen on which the projection is there, and so that has to be kept to the maximum for getting the best contrast results.
Yeah, so I think for color vision, contrast, color and contrast are very important. That's why when we use the Ishihara charts, it has its own, a dull illumination, which is different from the other charts that is given. And that is why we take Ishihara as the standard. And I think the apps must be doing the same.
Most of the apps are doing on Ishihara, but there's this one app which is doing on D15, in which you need to rearrange the cubes it basically gives you. It's like a D15 simulation exercise only.
And somebody's asked, any test for contrast sensitivity and
Clinic CSF is the app name, but it's available only on the iOS platform, Clinic CSF.
I think even the screen size would affect the visual acuity because different phones have different screen sizes. I don't know how much that's taken care of in these apps. So
that's screen size, true.
So I think these apps can, for now, just give us a gross estimation of what the vision is.
Yeah, you can't.
It's like a screening tool.
It's a guesstimate, not an estimate, but a guesstimate.
Right.
So I think we've had a wonderful session. And like I mentioned before, these apps are becoming very popular. They are getting very advanced by the day. And it would not be a surprise that in few years, these apps would be actually replacing some of the expensive equipments we are using in our practice today. I can just ask the moderators if we have any other questions in
there's a question for Dr. Rahil. Dr. Rahil, one of the audiences is asking, is the app chargeable?
Yes, like I mentioned.
How to get the Tor IR?
Yes, like I mentioned before, I think first 20 to 30 cases are free. You can use it for free just to get the hang of it. And then it is chargeable per 100 cases. Or you can take an yearly subscription. Yeah, they have different charges for that.
Okay.
There's an interesting question from the audience. One is asking, is there any smartphone-based app for the mobility of low vision patients?
I haven't heard of any. Dr. Manik? No. I also couldn't find in my search.
But till now, it is not available.
They are not apps really, but there are some magnifiers available. I'll have to check on the name, but there are definitely magnifiers available, which can be like LVA reading aids. If that is what they're asking, I think.
I guess that, and basically what I think is that there are a lot of softwares like JAWS and things which magnify whatever there is there on the print. So that is the one. Apart from that, I don't think so there's any.
Some phones also have an accessibility feature built in.
Yeah.
Where you have a round coming up and you can move it to magnify things.
Yeah, to magnify. So
sometimes, and then you also have a read aloud. Whatever textbook you have, you can have a read aloud.
That I think every phone has.
Conversion is there.
Yeah. But it's good that we are discussing this because sometimes we forget to tell this to our patients. Among all the medicines and surgeries and injections, the simple tools in our smartphones which can
should make life easier for them.
That's very true.
So do we have any other questions, or we can wrap up the session now?
Yeah, that's good.
There's a question for Dr. Neha ma'am. Is there a mobile app for PubMed?
Yes, there is, absolutely. And the new PubMed is actually optimized for your mobile. The older one wasn't properly. The new version, which will be there from May, is. So there's a PubMed app as well.
Okay.
Works almost the same way like I showed. The features are the same.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Over to Ryan.
Just few concluding words from Mahajan sir.
Sir, it's really a fantastic and a very, very interesting thing to know about the tech-savvy people. And smart cameras are helping so much nowadays. And with all the apps in the market, I think things will be very, very easy in the coming days for the practitioners who want to start the practice. They don't have to invest so much money for the very high-end machines to capture the things and to do the research or whatever it is. So it's a good thing. Really a very, very nice presentation, and all the speakers, they have done their best. Thank you very much.
Namrata ma'am, can we have something from you as well?
I think I'm always impressed by the young brigade, and again, like always, you've done a great job even this time. So I would like to thank, and I must congratulate Delhi chapter of Young Ophthalmology Society of India, which is pretty active at all platforms. So I would like to thank Rahil for coordinating this program. He's the one who said that you want to do this, and it's a great idea. Neha, who's the president of the Delhi chapter of UZ, and I'm sure you'll do again in your own tenure great job. Then the secretary of the Delhi chapter of UZ, and all the young boys and girls who really helped us to do this. Great presentation. Manik, you are like an encyclopedia of apps and ophthalmology, so we know where to go to when you want to know about the apps. And Nilesh, very impressive presentation. Thank you, moderators Aditi and Abbas.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Devang, of course, I forget to thank. He's in Aarti Center only, so I take her for granted. But thank you so much, everybody, and thanks to Dr. Mahajan sir and Dr. Bhalla for always being so proactive and always being so encouraging to the young.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Really congrats to you. He's heading the.
I'd also just like to thank Dr. Anu.
You are really forward lady in heading all the young.
Thank you, sir. So I was just saying I want to thank Dr. Anu June also. She's our academic in charge, and she had a great role in making this program. Unfortunately, she had to opt out at the last minute because she's on COVID duty.
For us.
For us all.
Yeah, for all of us. It was a wonderful, very interesting webinar because it was something different from the normal routine. And thanks to Rahil, Neha, Bhupesh, and all the young brigade, you have shown us some new things which just appeared out of their realm. And it was really wonderful learning so many new things and what is possible. Devang, Mehnat, and Nikhil, wonderful. Nilesh, wonderful thing which you are a real innovator. And Abbas for moderating.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
We'll have more of these things with you in future.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity, and especially I would like to thank Dr. Bhalla sir, because I know how much I've been troubling him, calling again and again, sir, ye kaise, wo kaise, and he's been very, very patient to me, attending all my calls and guiding me further. So thank you, Bhalla sir, Namrata ma'am, Mahajan sir, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, speakers, moderators, and the audience who are logged in. We have more than 2,000 people who are, I think, already logged in. So it's a great success for them. Thank you, everyone. And if anybody has any other questions, they can post it up on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be more than happy to answer those.
Okay.
Right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.